It's not my main objective is not really to teach you about sound or your relationship with sound, but just to um, share my experience with it, and hoping that it will inspire you to rethink your relationship with sound. So thank you again. Um, I describe myself as um, island child. Uh, it's something that I have to maybe because actually I was born in IT, but I left when I was 4 years old. So I consider myself like a Canadian, and I live in Canada the majority of my life. My relationship with IT was a horrible one, in a way that since I grew up in the 90s, and we didn't really have access to a lot of information. So everything that I learned from IT came from my parents. So they told me, IT was told to me in a way. And since my parents dealt with a lot of traumatic memories, they only told us about the good things, like this beautiful country, landscape, people. They never talked about um, the political event. I learned that like in books actually later on, because my parents wouldn't talk about it. But it it's I'm sorry. I'm also gonna make a lot of digression today. I wrote something, but maybe I will deviate from it from time to time. So IT was described to me. It was also um, sung to me in a way that my mother used to sing a lot of song from there, and I think that from a very young age, my relationship with stories and the voice takes a lot of place in my work came from that actually. Um, um, this idea also, I'm trying to trace you away to the way like I conceive work. So I had to start with 80, and with that comes the nostalgia of returning. Because when my parents came to Canada with myself and my older sister, the idea was to stay in Canada for a few years and then wait for the country to become a little bit more stable and then go back to Haiti. It never happened, and as a child, I inherited that nostalgia of the return. It's an obsession in my work, um, and I think that the idea of being from a place but living in another place created some kind of disconnect. I feel like I'm always in a limbo, and I think it's why I create the work the way I do, in a sense that I'm always in between land, in between state of mind, in between time also. And there's always a little bit of disconnection between what you see on the screen and what you hear in the voiceover, but also what you hear in the sound design. And that pretty much informed the way that I think and I create heart. Sorry. Um, Also, I talked about how um, AT was told to me, and the way that Asian people love to tell stories. Um, the country is not the best with archiving stuff, like literature, journal article. It's a big problem. So for me, even when before sorry before I wanted to become a filmmaker, it came very late in my life. I'm started to make film 9 years ago. Before that, I was a producer, a cinematographer. I did the editor. I did a lot of things. But since I was a child, I recorded. I had a little recorder, so I recorded a lot of random stuff. So my mom walking from the kitchen to the bathroom, my dad saying a thing, my mom washing the dishes, and I didn't know at the time because I kept all of those sounds that I was creating a personal kind of sound archive. And when I became a filmmaker, it really I still use a sound from 2003 or I have a sound library. Very everything is well referenced. So I never knew that I would use those sound and even became a filmmaker. But now it's at the center of my practice. Like I said, actually most of my film has a voiceover. Again, it's because I often tell that story that I became a filmmaker because of my dad, and I create my story in an unstructured way because of my dad. Because when I was little, he used to tell us bedtime stories, and at the time I thought that they were the worst, in a way that he would never like take a book, like he would like invent them, and they didn't make really any sense. He was like for some reason there was always like two characters like traveling together. So the character would be like walking in a valley, and suddenly they would be on a boat, and then suddenly they would be on the top of a mountain, but you would never explain how they got from place to place. But I think that it really informed me from a very young age that you don't need to understand everything. You don't need to explain also everything. And you can allow people to make links between things without really explaining it to him. And it used to drive me very like crazy when I was a kid, but I realized that as a filmmaker I do exactly the same. um, I don't I don't I It's not an intention to create a direct cause and effect from image, from sound, and even from voiceover. um, Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a short excerpt of a film called Dry Atlas. It's my second short film. I made it in 2018, and it's the story of a maid being interrogated by a policewoman about the suspicious death of her employer. And now I'm going to make another digression. But when I was a teenager, I was in love with everything that my sister loved, because I thought that she was the coolest, and I still think that she is the coolest. And she was a fan of the show Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and yes, and I knew at the time that I wanted to make a vampire movie. So for me, it was like a homage of to Buffy, with like very limited budget, which like was like $300. And it was essentially a conversation off screen between the maid and the policewoman, and she's very cold toward the maid, and she asks her a bunch of questions. Where are you? And the policewoman speak in German, and the maid answer in Creole. So for me, it was a way to also question the language, because you kind of feel like they understand each other, but each of them respond in their own languages. And I recorded the sound for the Atlas, all the sound that you hear, I recorded them in between 2005 and 2017. When I started writing the script, it's essentially a scene. So it's the conversation between the maid and the policewoman. And at first I was like, okay, before writing the voiceover, I was like, okay, what do we hear? And since I lack imagination, I always, even if the work is a bit fictional, it comes from a personal history. So I was a maid. My employer never died, and I was never questioned by the police. But when the maid explained the type of work that she would be doing in the house, it was essentially what I was doing in the house when I was working in a private home. And so I was like, okay, what do we hear in the film? So I was like, okay, we hear her dog. It's a process. We hear a dog because when I would walk over to that particular home, there was like a guard dog, which I recorded at the time, never thinking that I was going to make a film about that. We hear, put on this, or not forgetting. We hear like coins rolling on the floor because the man of the house was always leaving like coins in his pocket. So when I was putting them in the laundry, it was just falling over. We hear birds, birds from 80 that I recorded in IT, and also bird that I recorded in Germany when I shot the images. And the film really came about because I was in Germany, in Dresden, in 2015. And when I travel, I don't take a lot of pictures. And my mom is very mad about that. I keep promising to her that I will take picture of Colorado, and I do not. So I have to do that maybe tomorrow. And but I love to walk around in the city and record random sound, mostly like early in the morning where there's not a lot of people. And sometimes I carry a Bolex camera with me, and if I feel inspired, I will shoot a few images. So I was in Dresden very early morning in 2015, and I had my camera, and I was feeling a bit out of place. So I decided just to film like buildings. So I filmed like a roll of film, and I didn't complete the roll. I think it was I shot maybe 2 minutes 40 or something on the roll. The roll is like 3 minutes, depending on how Kodak like cut the 100 feet, because sometimes it's a bit more. So I was not inspired to finish the roll, so I actually left the roll in the camera for a couple of years. I don't. Maybe you should not do that, but I just did that, and 3 years later, because I have several Bolex cameras, so I just decided to leave it there. And 3 years later, I was shooting another film, who became my third short film, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna bring the camera and finish the roll. So I was shooting in IT. So I arrived, and the first thing that I shot was the top of a building. And then I was like, okay, I finished the roll. I put it in the little case. And when I came back to Montreal, I processed the roll, and I was like, oh, okay, 3 years ago, I shot a building in Dresden. I was like, oh, okay. And at the end of the roll, there's a flash frame between a building in Germany and a building in IT. And that was the main inspiration for me to think, okay, I could connect the two. And that was like the first inspiration. The second inspiration was I went to Vienna in 2016, and by mistake I went to a screening for kids, and I was like, okay, short film for kids, why not? So I arrived, and there was an actress like sitting near the stage who was like dubbing everything in German. And I was like, oh wow, this I didn't understand anything she was saying, but the tonality of her voice, I was like, okay, I love this voice. I have to work with her someday. So I have a little book. I was like, okay, her name was Magda Pribitzer. So I was like, okay, Magda Pribitzer. I'm just gonna put it there someday. And when I thought about making Dre Atlas, I was like, okay, I need two characters. I need a policewoman, and I need another character, which was myself, because I didn't have a budget. And once I reached 30 years old, it was very important for me to pay people to work on projects. So I was like, I don't have the money to pay somebody, so I'm gonna do it myself. So I did one of the character. So I wrote to Magda. I was like, oh, you don't remember me. We never talked, but remember 2 years ago, I was at a screening, and I fell in love with your voice, and I it was a bit maybe a bit creepy, but and I would really love to work with you. And I explained a little bit to her what I wanted to do with the film. I wrote a first version of the script in English. She did the translation in German, and at first it was supposed to. I was supposed, because I was learning German at the time, I was supposed to do the film all in German. I recorded my part. I sent it to her. She was like, "Oh, it's pretty good," but the tonality of myself, like speaking in German, was too much of a disconnect for me. So I decided to go with Creole, which is, even if I don't speak it perfectly, it's a comfort language for me. And since it's a film about dynamic of power, and naturally I decided to re-record my voice in Creole. So I'm going to show you a little bit of the film, a short excerpt. Today I'm going to show very short excerpt of my film, but if you want, after, I can like send you links if you want to see them. So, okay. It's very short. But yeah, basically I just wanted to show you the last part of the film, where there's a flash frame between that building in Dresden, and that house in Jacmel. So Dre Atlas, or like most of my, I would say all of my work, is constructed the same way. I have an idea of a story that I want to tell, which all of the time come from my personal life. Like I said, I have not a lot of imagination. I have a lot of admiration for a filmmaker or a creator that can like invent a world out of like nothing. For me, it has to come from my life, because um, I I I have to feel related to what I create. So okay, to go back to Dre Atlas, because the process that I use for this film is the same that I use with all of my film. Um, I wrote the script, which a list of sound, very personal to me, telling a story basically to myself in a way. And then I recorded my voiceover. Magda recorded her voiceover, and then I went to the editing suite, and then I edited a sound edit of the film, like with the music, the voiceover, with the sound design. And what I did afterward is, okay, this is my finished film, it rarely changes. Like once the sound is locked, I'm like, okay, this is it. And for a few, depending on the project, but for the Atlas, maybe it was a few weeks, I would listen to the film. So when I was like doing the dishes, when I took a walk in the subway, just listening to the film and try to recall images or how I would organize the images. So once I felt confident enough that the sound space that I created for the film inspire me enough to create images. For that project, I already have images. Then I started to edit the image on top of it. And that's pretty much what I do with like every project. I need to actually create a map. So even for Cette Maison, I always try to think of the destination, the final destination. And for me, it's relating to a sound. So for Cette Maison, the film, the last sound that you hear, and it's not very clear. I know that it's there with my sound designer. Sometimes we hide things. So the last sound that you hear is the sound of the mother of my cousin, like just breathing. Like I just recorded her breathing, and that's the last sound that you hear. And when I wrote the script, I was like, okay, my film will finish with that sound. So for me, it was like a point of reference to say, okay, now I am allowing myself, I know where I'm going, and now allowing myself to like take detours, because to pay homage to the Asian culture. I don't know if you know a lot of Asian people, but I never met an Asian person who can tell a story and go straight to the point. It's always like going back, going around, interruption, and I think it informed the way that I create work. I go around in circle a lot before going going to my final destination. I actually enjoy taking a lot of detours, and I think my brain is wired that way. But it's also the way that we tell story, but the way that we absorb story. And I had to change a bit the way that I was when I moved to Canada, because also Asian people interrupt a lot when they are told stories, and they do a lot of I don't know how to say that in English, but sound reactions to just with the sound you can know how a person feel or how a person react. And I try not to do it a lot to people, so I won't sound that strange. But that way to react to story with sound also inform the way that I create work. So for each project that I make, I create a map. I call it a sound map, and I have multiple points of reference, which are specific sounds related to memories or related to an emotional state. I forgot to say also, my mind. You can interrupt me anytime you want if you have questions. It's not a bother, and I will welcome it. So if you have a question for me, or you have the feeling that you would want me to expand on something, or something is not clear to you, don't hesitate to ask me a question. So okay, yes, I have a point of reference, and it's like I saying things to myself, and I'm trying to go towards the final sound, the final state. And for me, sound is deeply related to memory. Like I said, for the people who was there yesterday, I have a better sound memory than a visual memory. So if I want to remember Thomas or Luisa, I will recall a certain way that you said something, or less than what you were wearing that day. It's The sound is very present in my mind, and it's the way that I found to create art, but also it's a guide for me to navigate the world. And for each project, I need to know where I'm going. Um, and it's also a way to be present in the world through sound. It's close to memory, and I'm not talking also about because when we think about memory, we think about images, we think about we try to make them as clear as possible. And I think that sounds allow you to more freedom to interpret things in a sense that sorry, I kind of I lost my train of thought. It will come back to me. I'm sorry. Okay. I will show you another clip of one of my short film called Song for the New World. It's a film that I made in 2021. It was inspired by the disappearance of my grandfather. He disappeared in Montreal in 1986. He went out to buy milk and was never seen again. Yes, I have a lot of strange things that happen in my family. And the film is an act of imagination from his children or grandchildren point of view, imagining him being still alive and living in Scotland. You would say, why? Why Scotland? Why is the link? I have no family there. Basically, because Scotland is the country that I traveled the most for work, but because I have a lot of friends living there, so I have a lot. My sound archives from Scotland is pretty extensive. I recorded like cars, people eating, very like random, the most random sound that you would think about. I recorded them in Scotland. I think Scotland and IT are the country that I have the most sound archival from. So for me, it was easy because easy link to make. Yes, I recorded some in Scotland from 2009 to 2016. And so I imagined the story about those children, imagining their dad or granddad living in Scotland. So I wrote a script, and like the usual, I wrote a lot list of sound that you would hear in each scene. And what allows me to do that is because I revisit my sound archive almost daily. Like I listen to sound that I recorded almost daily. And sometimes I quiz myself. I was like, okay, this wind is from Jacques Mel in 2000, and then I go check, and then maybe. So I'm very familiar with the sound that I record. Once I record them, they kind of become part of my life. So when I write a script, it's come very easily to say, okay, this bird from Quebec, and this always, and it's not because now I'm thinking maybe it would sound random, but it's always linked to the story that I want to tell and to that emotional state and very personal emotional state that I want to express. So for Song from a New World, I had most of the sound would come from my travels in Scotland, and the sound that I recorded over the years in IT. And when I was thinking about tragedy and the tragedy of the disappearance of my grandfather, since Song from the New World is my sixth short film, and I was getting a bit tired also to do and write voiceover. So I was like, okay, what can I do with that film? And I thought about comfort, and for me, comfort is lullabies. So I wrote and recorded lullabies in Creole because it's uh, my first link to lullabies is my mom singing lullabies to me in Creole. And I recorded a few lullabies, and that was the main point of reference in the film. And then I edited the sound from Scotland and the beautiful winds from Haiti that I use in all of my films. And the film came about. So I'm going to show you a short excerpt of the film. And yes, I'm going to continue. Wait, sorry. Okay, that's right. Right. So the film is basically structured around lullabies that I wrote. Um, and like Triatlas and all of my work, I did a sound edit of the film, and I listened to it for quite some time. And it was the first of my short film that I did not have a film roll lying in a Bolex somewhere. So I had to shoot images from it. So it was a very interesting process. So I did the sound edit, listening. It took me a while, actually, more than a few weeks of listening it every day, obsessively trying to come up with, okay, what images I'm gonna um, have to shoot to ex, to express what the sound is already expressing in a way. So I decided to go to my family and I shot a few images of my nephews and niece. I also shot that same summer. I went to Haiti, and um, I don't really enjoy shooting people. I did it with my nephew and niece, but they were also um, I kept a distance. And so I decided, since I'm very shy, putting a camera in the front of somebody, even if I know them, for Cette Maison, it was a challenge. I never really feel comfortable. So what was more comfortable to me was, shooting landscape, people or from afar, and I created. I I I put a limitation on myself. I was like, okay, I'm going to shoot one roll. I'm always like shooting a roll. It's like I'm shooting 3 minutes. And since I use a lot of repetition in my work, I was like, I can make it work, because the sound edit of the film was around 9 minutes. I was like, okay, I'm shooting one roll. I have to see kids, landscape, and the sea. The sea is always there somewhere in the work that I do. Um, I am obsessed with the sea in a way. It comes from the story of how Haiti came about, the slave trade from Africa, and the sea is always present um, in what I create, but also what I record. I have a lot of recording of sea waves, and it's even if it's kind of a traumatic memory passed through generation. It's also very comforting uh, space for me. So there's always sea, the sound of the sea in all of my work, and strangely enough, also birds. Um, my mom loves birds. My cousin who died loved birds. I love birds. I study them. I record them. And a little anecdote, but when I did the first sound edit of Cette Maison, there were like birds everywhere, like in every scene. Like, you would hear them inside, outside. I didn't care. I was like, they are here to stay. And I made a deal with the sound designer, because I did the first, like, I always do the first version of the sound design to so I made a deal with the sound designer, and I was like, he was like, I think, Miryam, it's a bit too much, like. And they were like very loud also. I wanted to feel their presence. So he told me, I don't think that this is the kind of film that you are doing, but I'm gonna make a deal with you. I'm gonna keep them, but I'm just gonna, we will know that they were here, but the general public will not. So I do that sometimes. I hide little sound, comforting sound in the sound design, maybe to give me comfort that something that I really love is always there and present. Okay. Okay, I was there. Mm, okay. Also, what I really enjoy about creating a soundscape or sound design is that you can almost and visibly weave different times together or different space together. For Cette Maison, um, for those who were there yesterday, but I'm just going to repeat it. The film was supposed to be part of the film was supposed to be set in IT because of insurance and pandemic and political event. I was not able to go there and shoot the film there, and it was very painful. But um, all of the natural sound, wind, the sea, the birds, all of those sounds, I recorded them in IT. So for me, it was a way to, okay, you see that beautiful landscape of St. Lucia, but the sound coming from it is coming from IT. And I did that in also in Dreatlas, in a sense that it's not you cannot know that it's there if I don't tell you. But throughout the film starts, and you hear like wind, and throughout the film, I mixed the sound recording that I did in the wind in Germany and the sound recording that I did in 80. And throughout the film, the wind from 80 takes over the whole thing. So for me, it was also a way to have like maybe a political commentary, but just I know that it's there, but I don't really need to talk about it. But for me, it was a way also to. I always try to tell parallel stories with the sound. So there's the official story that you see on the screen or that you can relate to, but I always try to um, to express what I really or truly feel about the world, and maybe that I'm not courageous enough to be like confrontational about it. So I kind of hide little things in the sound design. Um, Also, Cette Maison was shot during the pandemic, and in the first version of the script, most of my family was supposed to be to be on screen, interacting with the actors. And because of the pandemic, it didn't happen. But since I had like so much recording of my mom walking, or my dad moving through the space, or the mother of my cousin washing dishes, um, I use all of those sounds to, when the character is moving through the space, it's not the sound of her walking, it's my mom, or it's with the sound designer, we find little way to incorporate sound of my family in the film and add to their presence, even if they were not like seeing on the screen. Um, okay. I'm going to show you a little clip of Cette Maison that you saw yesterday, just to maybe go deeper in the way that the sound was constructed in that scene. You know, it's a scene where there's not a lot of action happening, but I created, when I wrote the scene, actually, I created a lot of sound layers. I was like, okay, the morgue scene for me, it was very important to, um, even if it was a very difficult scene to write and to shoot, it was very important to me to find comfort somewhere in that scene. So I I wrote in the script that it had to have, and it's very subtle, but a mix of the different winds from all the part of where my family are from in Haiti. So there's a wind from Gonaïves, winds from Jacmel, and winds from Fond des Blancs, like all mixed together. Um, there's also a room tone that I recorded when I was maybe a teenager. My cousin was still alive. I recorded it in the house actually where she died. So there's a room tone of that. There's birds that you don't hear. They're there, uh, from very well hidden. Hidden here because for me it was a very emotional scene. I wrote dialogue with my cousin talking about her death and how she would like how she would react to this. So I had it bird because she was in love with them. So for me it was a way also to comfort her in a way. And I cut the clip a bit too soon, but when the doctor come into the room, you hear very subtle footstep, and it's not his footstep; it's the footstep of my dad walking at home. I mainly construct the film like that. All of my work like that. I create layers, and I call them layers of comfort. Again, to I guess manage the anxiety of creating works, because, like I said, I I'm not the most confident filmmaker, so I need to uh, create a peaceful environment to create, and sound is a integral part of it. Um, hmm, okay. Now I'm gonna talk a little bit about I did, but not in. I didn't really expand on it, but the relationship between image and sound and how they relate to one another in my work, and how I think to always try to create a dialogue between the two, even if it's disconnected. It's still a dialogue, and I try to had a poetic element to it. When I was younger, I dreamt of becoming a poet, but I was like, oh, this is gonna be difficult. Even if there's a long tradition of poets, Asian poets, growing up in Canada, even when I told my parents that I wanted to work in cinema. It was a bit of a struggle, mainly because they were worried about me making a living, not because they were like, this is nonsense, and because they love like arts and culture, but they were like worried um, about me being an artist. But that poetic intent, the intention stayed in a way, because for me, and it's very personal, but poetry is never about like clarity. It's never about understanding something perfectly. It gives you a lot of room to interpret things. You can revisit a poem years like later and feel differently about it. So that element of leaving room to interpretation is very important part of how I create my work. Um, so poetry, writing. I write a lot for my project, and I write in a very non-linear way. Um, I never, like I said earlier, with my dad stories, I never try to make sense of what I write. I think about a main idea, and I sit in front of my computer and I write things, hoping for the best most of the time. And what helps me is I always start with sound. So okay, what do we hear? What do I hear? Why also do I hear that? And try to make a connection between sound and also between different periods of time. So that first version of the text become my plan or my map. And like I said earlier, I rarely deviate from it. Like once, just to again manage anxiety. Once and I'm not saying that I'm very a close-minded person. I'm hoping to, when I work with the team, I'm hoping to change things. But most of the time, when I decide something, it's just there. But I can adapt if it doesn't work. Like I would say. Um, okay. I wanted to show maybe a last clip for Cette Maison here. In relationship with yes, in relationship of maybe weaving or binding different space and time together. So yes, when I wrote that scene, for me, and at this point of the writing process, because I wrote two versions of the script. The first version was the version more anchored in reality. I was going to Haiti. I was shooting in my multiple um, family members' home. And in the second version of the script, I knew that that was not going to happen. So I had to make a bit of modification, because in my mind, I would have recorded a lot much more of direct sound from the house, a sound from being actually in 80. So when I wrote the second version of the script, I was like, okay, okay, now I don't have the sound that I was supposed to have, so I have to uh, adapt and still make the same, keep the same intent that I had at first. So I was like, okay, what can we hear? Of course, the birds were going to be there. The sound of the wind, and particularly the sound of the wind from the city the mother of my cousin was born. So for me, it was like making the connection. Um, and it was also a way to move from a space, because the end of the scene is we are in Laval, and then we cut and we are in the, I would say, the fake IT. But through sound, I was able to make a smoother, in a way, transition, but also a smooth transition for myself. It's a very intimate thing. It wasn't about because for an audience, the transition between the two is like, okay, we're somewhere in Canada and we cut and we're somewhere in the Caribbean. But since those two spaces are very important to my family history, I needed to bind them together. And I was able to do that with the sound. Okay. That's pretty much what I wanted to talk about. Mainly because when you invited me to do like a masterclass, and I was like, okay, I was very happy and honored, but also very a bit stressed, because like master, like I'm not there yet. I was just what I haven't mastered anything, so it was a bit nervous, but yes, I wanted to share at the best of my abilities the way that my mind works and how I connect sound with emotions and mainly family history. So thank you. And yeah, if you have questions or even like commentaries, because it's not a conversation that I'm used to have. Like I said, I'm really shy, and even in Montreal, like people know who I am, but they never see me anywhere. So I don't have like conversation on how other filmmaker or artists relate to their sound practice. So if you want also to share about that, I would be very happy.
Thank you. That was, you think about making work in such a unique way, and it's very challenging to me to imagine, to hear. I couldn't do it, but you explained how you do it, and I'm going to think about that a lot. I have a very technical question,
Sure.
which will help me understand your process. How many items of sound are you working with? You said that you can remember them all and you listen to them. Can you just give me a sense of how large this collection is?
Oh,
And
okay.
Also, do you catalog it in any way? So do you
Yeah.
have like wind and
Yeah, sure.
so like how are you managing all of these items?
Sure. Yeah, I have a very detailed library. One that I I write everything, so that there's like books of stuff, but also in several art drive, and I categorize them. So win from 80, and like from year, and from neighborhood or cities, and walking sound from Laval, my parents' home. So my dad walking, the year, and such and such. It's very important for me to catalog everything, because I would be lost in my own soundscape, I guess. But yes, I catalog everything, and it's easier for me to, since everything is cataloged, and every sound that I recorded is linked to an emotion and how I felt. Because I also, in my book, I also um, write a few sentences of how I was feeling during the day. So in one film, I will use that sound from that wind sound from 80, that I recorded in 2015, and I felt hopeful, and such and such. But maybe in another film, I'm gonna use the sound from 2008 when I was very anxious. But it's very like personal. I know that I don't think a person can make differentiate the two, but it's the way that I classify. I think. There's a lot. I've been doing this for a long time, so I would say I have a few, more than a few art drives. So more than 50,000, I would say. I record a lot of. I don't really have a life. I would say I don't do much, so I do a lot of walks around, just record things. I love it. So. Mhm.
So just your process, like if you're recording 50,000 sounds, then you're coming home and then you're cataloging them right away.
Yeah.
So like the cataloging is taking a certain amount, as much time as the production,
Sure.
and it's part of the process, I assume.
Yeah.
And are you producing new terms as you're cataloging over all these years, or are you using a small set of terms?
It's very small, like, and simple, for me to understand. Like it's basically the year, the place, how I felt, and that's pretty much it.
Thank you so much, Miryam.
Okay.
This is so fresh and exciting. I think you're an alchemist of sound, creating these mixtures that turn into a new element. They turn into gold.
Thank you.
I'm so curious if you have a picture of a sound map. Can we see what it looks like?
Oh no, I don't, because usually, but I could send it one to you. I could send it to, because yeah, it would before going to the computer, I write everything. So usually the sound map is there in a book, and I have like multiple book of maps. But yes, I could send one to all of you, so you could understand what. Yeah, I'm sorry, I should have thought of that, but yes. Yeah, I'm gonna take a note not to forget.
Thank you so much for over here.
Oh, okay.
Hey. Thanks so much for sharing your process. I really am inspired. I love sound, so I'm really inspired by how you work it into your practice. I'm wondering how like when you're constructing this map, like these waypoints of sound, and you're writing them down, how much that changes in your process, like how much your map changes into the final product, and whether, and like also how that feels as an artist, like to if it does change a lot, like how that feels as part of your practice when you start with a goal and it changes. Yeah, I don't know if that makes any sense, but
it does. Usually, for all of my short film, it did not change, because also I write and produce and edit the film in a very short period of time, maybe 2 or 3 months. Again, because of anxiety, I'm always scared to die and not finish a project. It's a weird thing, but so that's why I'm always working a bit fast, because I need to finish it. Weird. But for Cette Maison, it was the first time that I had to change it a bit, and it was very challenging, because the map was so clear to me that I had to uh, mourn it a bit, and then alter the point of reference. So it was the first time, and even if it was difficult, I kind of also loved it, because I was like, oh, there's other ways that I could go with that, and still be satisfied with the work that I do. But it was the first time, and I'm maybe looking for it for the next time, that maybe I will not stick to the map and just go a little bit elsewhere. Thanks. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for presenting your work.
Thank you.
You partially answered the question in the course of your presentation, and I'm wondering, the map itself, does it come about the form that it takes? Do you do the sound edit first and then kind of create the map, or is the map the sound the editing timeline, or is it the written part that you're talking about?
It's the written part first, because
Oh,
I
okay.
think that if I would just open a timeline to start on the work, and then have like those so much sounds to work with, I would be lost. I would be lost in it. So I need to write a few reference points that mainly stay the same, and then allow myself to create around that.
I see. So the written map becomes the reference point for the editing.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
see. And then secondly, I was more of a kind of a comment, and then a question was like, I went to at a film festival, a sound design presentation by two filmmakers. One produces for 16 millimeter, so mono channel center only, and the other one was a 7.1 filmmaker. And he said in his sound designs he used all available audio tracks. I think he said 99 audio tracks were available to him, and he would often fill that all 99.
Okay, I'm not there.
Yeah, and the other person, though they might have several things, they're ultimately editing to a single channel. So I was wondering, do you design ultimately for a single channel? Do you record stereo and then like for a single channel, or?
I record stereo, and I think all of my film are stereo, so no 5 or 7. It would be. I think that I would never finished work. Like I would just experiment and do stuff and be mixing. So 2-channel is like enough for me.
And consistent with what you recorded.
Yeah,
so it makes
exactly,
sense.
exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
This is not a question or comment. I just want to say, really, I kind of hate doing stuff like this. I don't like Q&A should be about questions, not about like personal responses. But I was really moved by your presentation for a lot of reasons, and just especially the way you spoke about Haiti. And my dad is from Trinidad, and like the way your parents talked about Haiti is not how I was spoken to about Trinidad. It's like, you should be grateful to be in America. Trinidad shit. Like,
Okay.
I guess to
that's the
say
way.
I've made a lot of personal work, and also in terms of sound, the way you think about sound's incredible and really inspiring. I've always avoided touching that part of my life for so long, and it was just so generative and moving to hear about these ways of negotiating like bringing Haiti into your practice, even if it isn't visually there, or it's a lot I can't really articulate, but it's just really helpful to think about ways to enter into that space that I guess in terms of in between us, I've always felt like never a right to go to that space, frankly. Being raised in America, being raised predominantly by a white mother, and like regardless of how people, like I don't know, like even just like going to 7-Eleven, every cashier is like, "Oh, you're Indian, you're from India." I'm like, sure. But yeah, no, it was just really moving to hear you spoke about that, and like personally just so inspiring to want to interrogate that, because it's always been something that I've really pushed away from my practice, even though I'll be very open about other really important parts of my life. But that's one part that's very, for a variety of reasons, I've really pushed out. So I was going to say thank you.
Oh, welcome. Welcome. But it's very interesting that you talked about, how your parents talked to you about Trinidad, because it could have been the other way around in my family. And I think that the way, and sometimes it's the problem that, but my family dynamic is a way of protecting ourselves and each other is not to talk about the bad things. So everything is peachy and beautiful, and it create another set of problems. But it also the way that I was talked about 80 made me fell in love with it, even if I would watch in the news and very negative about the country, but at home Haiti was a beautiful place, and it is a very beautiful place. But I never thought that it could have gone the other way. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you for sharing that. It's also, I really appreciate. I'm sorry, I don't know your name, but the person who just spoke, Devin. I just think it's such a wonderful thing in a space like this where someone feels like they can share from that place, and I think that's partly an acknowledgement to you for opening up a space where we felt like we could share. So thank you for doing that. I have a not terribly formed comment, I guess, which is that I was thinking a lot during your presentation about preparedness and encounter. And I think a lot about control in documentary practice, like control and uncontrol. I don't think uncontrol is a word, but and I was thinking about how yesterday you talked about how you shot like an hour and 22 minutes, and then the film is an hour and 13 minutes, something like that. And there's like an audible gasp from the audience. And but now we're also hearing that you have this just enormous sound library, and you have this practice of walking around, and what I would understand as encounter-based practice. That's like walking around with your Bolex or with a sound recording, and really just seeing if you feel moved by something. Very much not. It sounds very unplanned to me. And I was thinking, oh, that's interesting. I feel like I have that approach with visuals that you have with sound, which I think is more common in documentary practice, potentially. So I really was hoping that as I talked, I would turn this into a question, but I don't know how to. But
It's okay.
I just think that I think documentary, like the documentary impulse, is a very interesting place to negotiate preparedness and encounter, control, lack of control. And I think we're probably all doing it in different ways and locating ourselves in different ways. And I think, maybe to share a little bit from my perspective, like I'm a very unprepared person, and it's like really great and then really problematic for me a lot of the time. Like I'll show up and I will be using a new camera and I won't know how to use it, and I'll have to learn how to use it, or I'll have it's so stressful. It's so stressful, and I have no idea what's going on. And then, and it's all like in the doing. But then there's certain other parts of my life where I'm like very kind of methodical and I don't know. I guess I don't know totally. I'm going to say one more thing and then I'm going to try to wrap it up. But I was also thinking about, you talked about anxiety in a very generous way. And sometimes I think about, like, I also edit my own films. And sometimes I think about, it's such a beautiful place to be out of control in control. Like there's something also about documentary process that can be a way of safely pushing ourselves in interesting ways, like safely going
into practices that would feel more challenging in life. Like I often edit from a very out of control place. And then in life, I like try to be a little more in control. So those are some thoughts that I end on. Maybe I would
Thanks.
love to hear what that made you think of. Maybe that's the way to go.
Yeah, thinking about control and managing, because even if a few times, and it did happen with Cette Maison, where when I went to Saint Lucia and Dominica, it was I've been to Saint Lucia before, but Dominica it was the first time, and I did not do a lot of research because emotionally I was a wreck. I was like, oh, I'm going to those places I was not supposed to go, and I went to both of those places with the associate producer of the film, who's a good friend of mine. And a few weeks before the shoot, usually I'm very prepared. I have a shot list, everything. And she was like, "Okay, what is the plan? Where are we going?" Because she was going to drive me to all of those places, and I was like, "Okay, I don't know," which was a first for me. And I told her I'm not gonna make a plan. So we're just gonna go there, and we drive. We would, go out in the morning and drive, like all day. And sometime I would say, okay, we can stop here. And there were days where we shot 30 seconds of things, and days that we shot. It was very a first for me, like just not knowing what I was doing with that. I won't say that it felt liberating. I felt lost the whole time because, like I said, usually I have a very precise shot list and everything. So it was my experience with being out of control. And we stayed there but I also put a limit to myself. I was like, okay, we're going to be there for 5 weeks. And we're going to shoot 10 minutes, maybe 12 minutes of material, not more, because I don't want to be dealing with those images that I didn't want it to shoot in the first place. So I was like, okay, 12 minutes max. And we actually did shot maybe 11 minutes of landscape and building over the period of 5 weeks.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, thank you for your film. And thank you for the class today.
Thank you.
I have a lot of notes, but I also have I've got several questions, and I've been premeditating how to make them really brief. So hopefully I can do that.
Sure.
So I would like to ask about the relationship between the mother and the daughter and the death of the daughter,
Mhm.
and how you decided or fell into the processing of that grief and the terrain of the tragedy,
Mhm.
right? Sort of the personal consciousness of the tragedy and the collective family gathering around the tragedy, that your cousin interacted with her own death
Mhm.
from the other side is deeply compelling to me, and opened up. And I thought about Eric's question a lot as I watched your film yesterday, when everyone when one of the conversations was introduced was, what is opening here and what is being closed. And so I found myself just sort of free falling in between the question, Eric's question, as I watched your film, right? And so this profound I don't know. I would really like to know, was that intuitive? Was it a device that you used for the film, or was it organic? You know, and that it evolved, that you were able to put quite visually and viscerally this reflection, the, the, the process of the mom dealing with this, completely ripping this her daughter out of her life and out of the life of the family, right? And there were times when I was watching it that I thought that it was the mother's consciousness answering questions about the death and everything that couldn't be answered through the dialogue that the daughter was having with herself from the other side. It was really complex, and at times I found myself really lost between, you know, what that dialogue was doing and where it was going. But I also found, and to use your word, comfort in not knowing where that was going to land. You know, at some point in the film, I thought, I don't need to know where this is going. I just need to know that they are okay. You know, so I really, I hope that made sense.
Yes, I think. I think that it's part intuitive, but also a lot of it is come from research and conversation that I had prior of writing the script with family members. And one of the questions that I would ask is, and it was a very difficult question for me to ask and very difficult for them to answer, is that to imagine her as an adult. And I have a little sister who is the same age of my cousin, and it was very strange, and they were very close, and it was very strange for her, you know, to actually grow up and graduate from high school and have all of these experiences that my cousin never had. So that conversation that my cousin is having with herself was very important for me to have from the beginning. When I started writing the script, also as a protection mechanism, I was like, I'm not gonna write her as a 14 years old. She's gonna be 26, 27, and it was a way to protect myself, but also a way for her to have the maturity to have that conversation that she had with herself. I don't know if I.
So it sounds like it was more like a device. So the intuitive part was like, okay, let me explore what's going on with the family here, right? And then and then the intersection came in the film as a device to show how that can move us beyond the tragedy without abandoning the tragedy.
Yeah. Thanks.
Hi, thank you so much for your presentation on your making process. Listening to you like talk about the role of sound in your work and how it's pretty much like, you know, present from like the writing stage, and then you kind of like edit the sound first and like editing the image comes after. I couldn't help but think about Rick Altman's like cinema as ventriloquism, and it was interesting to me that you know, you start from sound and you kind of like use sound as what compels what dictates how you edit the images. But it arrives at a different place. Like the sound doesn't like necessarily I don't know, sound and image aren't necessarily like conforming to each other. And I was wondering how much of you know, choosing that approach to sound and image is I don't know, in line with Altman's ideas, or basically like approaching how usually narrative cinema, conceals the apparatus. And if you're like in any way, I don't know, going against that.
Oh, this is a big question, but I would say that it's an inspiration. I'm not sure if I probably not that consciously try to go against a movement or a way to create a film. It's just the way that my mind works. Sometimes I would like to make more. I'm not going to say accessible, because I don't think that my film are not accessible. I view them as a you experience something, maybe you understand things or you reflect on things. But I would love to write in linear and make more money or something. But I tried. I can't. But if it can be perceived that I'm it's like a rebellion against something, but also it is the way that I was taught how to tell stories. So I blame my parents for that.
Thank you so much for being here. I know you expressed some anxiety around this being a masterclass, but your work truly does feel really masterful. So
Oh, thank
very
you.
inspiring, and really appreciate you being here. I feel like documentary has changed so much just even in the past few years, and we've been moving more and more into a space where documentaries are reverse engineered and have such a heavy emphasis on the visual aspect of them. I'm an editor. I've been editing for about 15 years, and I've always done like my sound first, and the visuals end up in there, but I try to really make the story make sense sound wise first. It's so important, like the story aspect of it and the structure of it, and then worry about the visuals later. And I teach a class at CU about last semester I taught one on ethnography, and Toma actually taught it before me, and so I used some inspiration from his syllabus. And expedition content was on there. I don't know if you're familiar, but I show that to the students, and then we talk a lot about sound and the importance of sound. And I think it can be it was a very confusing project for them, and maybe because of the way I set it up, it was my first time teaching, but like we had such a great time also talking about sound and helping them sort of think outside of the box. It was a big reason why I wanted to be here today, is I looked into your work and I was so inspired by it, and it blew me out of the water even more than I was expecting. So I think what I'm curious to hear is, it feels like so much of your work is informed like intuitively and sort of comes through you and from you. Do you have external sources of inspiration? Is there any other filmmakers or anybody or any styles that you look to for inspiration as you're creating your project?
Yes, there's a few. And it's a question that I always think, okay, I need to prepare for that question. I should write some things about, and then when I'm gonna go back home, I'm gonna be, oh, I should have said this and this. But like now on the spot, I didn't prepare anything, and I'm like, okay, who should I talk about? I often talk about Chris Marker and Ousmane Sembène. Like those are my main influence, mainly because those are the filmmaker that I revisit like almost obsessively. Like I have a little ritual. Like when I start a project, I have to watch at least one film from Marker and one film from Sembène, and then I feel like, okay, I can. I've been blessed. Now I can go and work. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, Miriam.
Hi.
Echoing everyone. Thank you so much. It's been so wonderful.
Welcome.
something that's lingering for me after seeing your film yesterday, and I'm excited to familiarize myself with more of your work after this, is the score.
Mhm.
And I'd be curious to hear about how you work with a composer, if you're like, what is the nature of that relationship? Because the score is so cinematic.
Mhm.
And you mentioned theater as well, and it was evocative of theater, or thinking of like sitting at a soundboard at times. So yeah, I just wanted to hear you speak about that.
Sure, thank you for the question. And it will be an opportunity to talk about Romain Camiolo, who did the music for Cette Maison. I would say that for all of my short film, I composed the music myself. Something that I love to do, and I did like for all of my work. But for Cette Maison, it was too much of a personal film, and I was like, I cannot do I cannot do it. I need distance. And Romain is a very good friend of mine. He's very young, but I know him. I think 10 years or something. Before he started studying music, is 25 now. And I knew that I needed to work with somebody who knows me well, who knows all the weird stuff about how I work and how I create work. So very early in the process, when I did the sound, my sound map, but also the sound script, I had a meeting with him. Sent it. Okay, in the first scene, you're gonna hear this, and when I had the first version of the script, I sent it to him. A few reference. Um, um, my dad really loved classical music, so I sent a few reference to him, and then I really let him. I just basically told him what I didn't like, and then he just and that's how I work with most of my collaborators. I talk a lot about the intention and what I don't like, and then I let them do their thing because I chose them for a reason. And then it was basically the same thing with the art direction and the director of photography. So it was a very strange experience for me because it was the first time that I did a sound edit without doing the music, because the music came a little bit later in the process. So I was a bit lost, and I didn't put reference music because I could have, but I was scared to be too attached to it, and then I have to deal with this emotionally, and I was already very fragile emotionally. So I was like, okay, there's no music. And then when I did the first edit of the sound edit, I sent it to him, and then he started to do like things, and there was a lot of back and forth during the process, and I realized that I actually loved it. So maybe I will work with composers in the future.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for sharing your work and your process with us. It's such a gift. And I guess my question, and I had to step out for a minute, so I hope no one asked this, but was going back to the map, but more even when you talked about that, what the goal or the destination is, and that doesn't change.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if there is, if there ever has been a change, or if that has always been a constant, but it's just figuring out how to get there that has had to change somehow, and maybe what the process is for you to feel that, what is it that happens internally to know like this is the goal, this is the destination. I guess I'm just I have a project right now where I don't know that, and I'm so lost. Like I know what the heart of the film is, but I don't know that where the map needs to go. So I'm just curious about that part of the process for you.
Yes, but I think it's okay not knowing. Sometimes I would love to just be, free, free of the map. But I can't do that. But I partially, I think, answered that question. But I'm gonna repeat what I said, which is usually it doesn't, change that much. But for Cette Maison, it had to because pandemic, not shooting with my family, not going to AT. The actress had to add 15 minutes per day that they could be together during the restriction. So it's a lot of the shot when there's distance between them. It actually works in the film. It was because of the restriction. So I had to alter the map a little bit. I'm not going to say that it was a joyful thing to do, but at the same time, the final destination, which was tell a love story between a mother and a daughter, it kind of stayed the same. Yeah, I think that maybe it makes me sound a bit rigid about stuff. But yes, I had to adapt maybe the road that I had to take to reach my final destination. Thanks.
Hi.
Hi.
My question is this: it strikes me. I mean, we've talked a lot about sort of this notion of kind of going sound forward somehow, or starting sound. I'm curious. Do you ever just leave it there and make a thing that is just sound? And
Yes, but only for myself. So I have like sound edit of stories that are just there on my computer. So in between project, in order to always be connected with sound, I will edit a project, but I just do it for myself actually.
so there's sort of, it's like an unfinished thing.
Yes and no, because in my mind it is finished, but I don't feel the need to share it or to make like something out of it. So it's just a work of art that I created only for me, and I'm really at peace with that.
I really get that. Thanks.
I wait. This isn't a question. Kind of. It's really another comment.
It's okay.
I'm coming from. I did film stuff for a little bit, and then became more of a performance artist. And I just really appreciate how you are describing sort of setting up this like somatic map for yourself, almost, so that you can just like move through the making of your film. And I find that really useful just for, I don't know. I just want to say I really appreciate that. The like dealing with the anxiety, especially, and creating kind of like a time that you're gonna
Yes, exactly.
get it done in, and like having that sort of map of feelings. And yeah, I guess I just wanted to like highlight that as being a useful way to like move authentically and have like musicality in your film too, so that it's not just, it isn't rigid because
yeah. Maybe, but yeah, it really helped me to knowing that I know how it's going to end in a way. And we were talking about control. And it's kind of forced also me to do it because I have this map. I know where I have to go. I cannot make an excuse and say, I don't know where it's going. I kind of know. So it's a way to force myself to actually finish work.
As crazy as this is, I have a question for Eric. Eric, you were talking about maps at the beginning. and what you thought maps do. And many of the filmmakers at the beginning were talking about maps. How do you think about our first conversation about maps, given Miryam's use of maps in the filmmaking, or Eric, or any of the filmmakers who started? That was really interesting beginning. Maybe everyone wasn't here, but I don't think you were talking about maps like she is.
Well, first of all, as we're coming to the end of the session, like Miryam, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank
so
you. Thank you.
much.
Thank you. But I think that there is a weird relationship with maps, especially in this part of the world, as they are like cartography in general. I associate with a sort of abstraction of land that leads to an attitude towards it that allows you to think it might be conquered in some way, right? Like this cartography produces this like relationship with land that is almost a simplification in some way. I mean, I love the Borges story, right? Of the civilization that creates a map that is one-to-one scale, but the civilization crumbles, and so we're wandering around the desert finding scraps of this giant map that once covered the entire world, right? And it's one-to-one scale. And I think of the less practical the map is, the less dangerous it might be, right? In some ways. But I think this is a different kind of mapping, in that it's more about direction, like an intention, rather than abstraction of a landscape or a place or even time. I don't know if that's how you think of it, but it feels like a way to direct affect.
And it's a very personal map. I mean, I would show it to you and it would mean nothing. So it's very, it's something very intimate, actually.
And in that way, very impractical in a sense. And so not dangerous, maybe. I don't know. I don't really know, but that's my initial reaction to that question. And, in the film, landscape is so prominent.
Yeah.
I mean, you make a direct, you do an equal sign almost with the superimposition of, of a body under a blanket with, I guess it's St. Lucia there. Yeah. Which of course I thought was Haiti.
Okay.
I feel so tricked.
It's okay. Only the people from IT, like the first frame, they're like, no, this is not.
Yeah. But that seemed like a kind of cartographic gesture.
Yeah, sure.
Of like mapping a body onto the land in some way and mapping the land onto the body. I don't know. I don't have a great question to form out of that.
It's okay.
That's all I've got.
Thank you so much for staying. And
Thank you,
listening.
Miryam. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I have one more question,
yeah,
Miryam.
sure.
Thank you. That I would have been so sad if I couldn't have asked you this. But how much does tradition interact with your script writing, your sound library, and how you ultimately put together your documentary films? How much of that is Haitian tradition informing that?
I would say it, depending on the project. I'm gonna take the example of Cette Maison. It's anchored in a very specific also tradition, in a way that Shelby and I wrote the script, but she would read it and send me commentary. And I realized that since our parents grew up in different region, the tradition that are in the film are very specific to the region that my parents were born. And it's people special. I don't know how to say that word anymore. Sorry. People from Gonaïves and Jacmel will feel closer, I think, to the film because of the object that I choose, and even if I speak Creole with accent, it comes from Jacmel and Gonaïve. So it's like the two, and those are different accents. So those two accents mixed with my Quebecois accent give a specific Creole. So I try to mainly honor the tradition coming from my family.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Miryam. We hope to see everyone back at 1 p.m.